And we have breaking news here on CBS Sports HQ from the world of soccer. Chelsea owner and Russian billionaire Roman Abromovich has announced that he plans to sell the Premier League club. This comes as fallout continues in reaction to Russia's invasion of Ukraine. Abromovich says he will donate the net proceeds of the sale to victims of the war. Now, the decision comes as the UK government has come under increasing pressure to freeze the assets of Russians like Abromovich, who have alleged close ties to Russian President Vladimir Putin. The club is valued at around £3 billion, a little bit more than $3 billion US. So here's part of the statement. It was a lengthy statement, but he says, in the current situation, I have therefore taken the decision to sell the club, as I believe this is in the best interest of the club, the fans, the employees, as well as the club's sponsors and partners. I have instructed my team to set up a charitable foundation where all net proceeds from the sale will be donated. The foundation will be for the benefit of all victims of the war in Ukraine. All right, so we're now joined by CBS Sports HQ soccer analyst James Benge. James, first I'll start by getting your reaction to this. This all happened very quickly. I mean, just a couple of hours ago, we were saying that the potential was there, that it was a developing story, that it was being considered. But now it looks like it's actually going ahead. Abromovich says so. Your reaction to this news, that Chelsea are now for sale?
Yeah, well, as you say, Jeremy, we've known it's been coming for a few hours and we sensed it's been coming for a few days, but that doesn't change the fact that this is almost as much of a landmark moment in the history of English football as the day 19 years ago that Roman Abromovich bought the club. Chelsea were a good team then, a big team, but they weren't one of the biggest teams in Europe, a major force on the continent as they are now. And I think, we will look back at this 19 years as a remarkable period in English football. But yes, it was inevitable that something would have to change, that Abramovich would have to take action as the UK government limbered up for sanctions against him and others. And the sanctions do still hang over this entire process. We wait to see what Boris Johnson and those around him will do about Russian oligarchs. It's notable, as you mentioned there, that he says the money will be going to a foundation to help victims of the war in Ukraine. In part, I think doing things like that is really about discouraging an immediate action from the British government and making sure that all his assets aren't frozen, even if that means saying a reluctant goodbye to Chelsea.
Yeah, as you mentioned, he bought the club in 2003 for $187 million of today's dollars. It was 140 million pound back then, which of course the conversion rate obviously a lot different now. So, James, I know you're still working through this, but when we look at the financials here, I mean, he's talking about the club being valued at $3 billion. So how does the financial situation work? Because Abramovich is owed money by the club, is he not?
Yes, Abramovich is owed nearly $2 billion. And what he says is that will all be written off, that he will not be calling in those loans. And that really changes the sales process. And I'm sure we'll come on to talk about the people that are interested in this. But, a real challenge of getting any deal done was going to be all the money that Abramovich was in theory owed from nearly 2 decades of investing in players, in infrastructure. Writing that off is one of the most notable parts of Abramovich's statement. The other thing I would say, because we do have to view this through the prism of the war in Ukraine, is that Abramovich has actually acknowledged that there is a war in Ukraine. It's not the special military operation that it's described as in the Kremlin. There has been a real push for Abramovich to publicly condemn the actions of Vladimir Putin. And although he has not quite done that, it has to be said, this felt like about as much as you could realistically expect to get from a Russian oligarch, where he acknowledges the real damage that's done and says that, he will use a huge fortune, to try and correct some of the actions of a person he is alleged to be very close to.
And we're not telling tales out of school here when we say that. I mean, people who followed the English Premier League, who have followed Abramovich with Chelsea, they know that there are ties to Vladimir Putin here. And it seems like based on the government's reaction, the actions that the UK government is looking to take, it seems like this was inevitable. I mean, he's got villas that are up for sale in the UK as well. So it really seems like the sale of Chelsea Football Club, based on the actions that the government is taking, is inevitable at this point.
Yes, absolutely. And I think we would probably all agree that Roman Abromovich may well be the most high profile of the Russian oligarch class. And here in Britain, I can tell you that it has been a constant source of conversation and debate. Abramovich, and today in Prime Minister's Question Time, the leader of the opposition, Sir Keir Starmer, asked why it was that Abramovich had not been sanctioned. The chair of the all-party parliamentary group on Russia, Chris Bryant, has been asking a lot of difficult questions in the Houses of Parliament. So, as you're saying, Jeremy, we were getting to the stage where some sort of sanctions were inevitable. They may still happen, and they may still throw an almighty curveball into this sales process, because if these sanctions take place, you cannot do business with a Roman Abromovich, whoever you are, whichever suitor you are, for a club in the UK, if his UK assets are sanctioned. But that maybe is something we can be monitoring in the next few days. Right now, a really remarkable and significant story, and the end of one era at Chelsea, potentially the start of a very different one.
Well, and it's a massive thing for the Premier League as well, because of the fact they are the reigning European champions. So, I mean, this is something that is unprecedented in terms of what we're seeing in the Premier League. Okay, so let's turn the page and talk about potential suitors for this club, because once word started to get out that Chelsea might be for sale, I mean, they have had some people that have kind of reached out. I don't know if this is a joke or not, but Conor McGregor was tweeting about this, put out a tweet saying that, hey, Chelsea's for sale, maybe let's look into this. He says he wishes to explore it. I don't know how credible that is, but there is a Swiss billionaire who is legitimately interested in purchasing Chelsea, although it seems like right now the asking price might be a little high. I mean, James, how do you break down potential suitors for this club given the situation right now?
Well, Conor McGregor, I think we can probably rule out. This is the Premier League, so you never know what sort of crazy things might happen. But a mixed martial artist is probably not going to end up owning one of the most valuable brands in world sport. Hans-Jörg Weiss, however, is one of the leading figures in a coalition, however you want to describe it, a group of potential investors who are looking at taking the club off Abramovich's hands. I think, you will hear from those parties that are willing to go public, you will naturally hear complaints that the price is too high, because obviously it's in their interest to drive it down further. They will be sensing that a bargain can be struck here, and that, a really high quality asset in terms of brand recognition can be secured at something of a knockdown price. And I know it's very strange to be talking about that when we know why this sale is being made. But that's kind of the dialogue that's going to be happening. I'm told by people around the game that this is a process that Chelsea are going to look to conduct quickly, even whilst Roman Abramovich is saying we're not going to cut corners here. They're not going to waste time either in terms of getting this agreed and moved on. There are other interested parties as well. Some of them will be working alongside Weiss, but this is a real once-in-a-generation opportunity to buy yourself into the top table of European football. So look for others to come in. I'm intrigued as to how we'll ever have another owner quite like Abramovich, who was willing to throw so much money at a club and, for his own enjoyment, and incredibly demanding, would buy his coaches the best players and then expect the best football and the most trophies with those players. There are not many people out there quite like that. A lot of these people will not be looking at this as an emotional investment, in much the same way that Abramovich, while he saw business value there, he wanted something that he could enjoy, and he did really invest a lot emotionally in Chelsea. That that doesn't excuse some of the things he's done. He has done wrong, perhaps, but it's going to be a very different ownership model, whoever comes in next, compared to the billionaire Russian who's willing to spend his way to the top.
Yeah, you certainly can't say that he wasn't invested emotionally or invested financially in Chelsea Football Club, because he certainly was over the last 19 years, and he has the trophies and the records and the accolades to prove it. But now that team is going to belong to someone else. So CBS Sports HQ football analyst James Benge joining us from the UK, and with breaking news word out of the world of soccer, English Premier League side Chelsea, the reigning European champions, are now for sale. And for more on this and other news within the soccer world, be sure to join LME and his cast of characters, James Benge, part of that, as on the Que Golazo podcast. Daily drops covering all things soccer. They'll certainly be talking about this. You can download and follow Que Golazo wherever you get your preferred podcast audio. You can also watch the show on YouTube.
Do you want a sports network that delivers everything that matters about the game? The highlights, the picks, the instant analysis, no yelling, no fake debates, no politics. Hit the subscribe button and never miss a moment.